Create Peace at Home is a show dedicated to the voices of social justice movements.
We bring to you guests who are engaged in making a difference in the lives of those who are forgotten.
We are committed to finding solutions which make people safe and communities thrive.
We believe that people have powerful stories about personal transformation.
When shared, these stories begin a process of healing.
I'm Boona, your host. Welcome to Create Peace at Home. Hi, my name is Boona and I'm your host for Create Peace at Home. Welcome to the studio. In the studio with me, I have two very special guests from the East Bay Housing Organization. I'm going to introduce you to them, and then I'm also going to ask them some questions about who they are and where they come from and how they come into this show, which is based on issues of equity, social justice, which includes housing, homelessness, magic. We bring you many, many different kinds of shows. So I'm glad that you're watching us, and I welcome you, Sandhya Jha and Gloria Bruce. Thank you very much for taking the time to come and spend some moments with us. I would like to start with you, Gloria, sure, and ask you to say a little bit about EBHO and also this very exciting week that's coming up in May.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having us, Boona. So I work with East Bay Housing Organizations, EBHO, and we are a 29-year-old organization, and what we do is advocate for everybody to have affordable homes in the East Bay. So we preserve, promote, and create affordable housing across Alameda and Contra Costa counties, and we have almost 300 members, organizations, and individuals who come together from all areas, from planning, from labor, from interfaith, from local governments to achieve this goal. And every year we do a wonderful big week of events called Affordable Housing Week that celebrates the work that all of these folks do and also calls continuing attention to the housing crisis and the need to create more affordable homes for people who don't have sufficient housing or for people who have no homes at all. So our week this year will be from May 10th to 19th, and we're very excited to be able to talk about it tonight.
And welcome, I'm going to call you Sandhya because it's just easier for me because I know you're Indian and I'm Indian, and it's just easier for me to say Sandhya. What brought you to EBHO? And also with that, if you could tell us a little bit about what started your journey in social justice.
Absolutely. So the hats that I wear are as a pastor and as a community organizer, and there are not a lot of places, not a lot of organizations, even in the social justice world, that understand how important spirituality is in the work that we do, both for sustaining us and also for inspiring us to be our best selves. And EBHO is one of those organizations.
And also to be organizers in the movement towards affordable housing.
Absolutely.
And if we can pull all the faiths together to stand behind our message, it becomes that much more powerful.
Yes.
I was going to ask you a provocative question.
Okay.
I'm on Social Security. I pay 75% of my income to have a roof over my head. And many, many people, irregardless of what income status they are in, are living in homes that, or apartments that they're paying exorbitant amounts for. What in the future of the developing affordable housing do you see for folks so we can reduce the burden that just the housing costs have on a family?
It's a great question, and it's the one that we really exist to try to be finding solutions to. And you mentioned that you pay 70% of your income to keep a roof over your head, which is that's really difficult. And so just to let you and your guests know that, your watchers know that when we talk about affordable housing, we're talking about housing that folks could afford at 30% of their income or less. In the Bay Area, that's really difficult to find, but we've done a lot of studies to show that if you're spending more than a third of your income on housing, ultimately that might just not be sustainable, or you're going to be making other hard choices. And I think you also made the other great point that people of all sorts of incomes might in the future be facing those types of hard choices. And especially we have an aging population, we're going to see a silver boom, more and more seniors who need this kind of housing because they have a fixed income. So what we're trying to do is to work to have our members build more affordable housing, also to preserve what we have and to make sure that what's out there stays affordable, to rehabilitate homes that are out there that aren't as in good shape, but keep them as high quality, affordable housing. It's a really tough task because, as I'm sure we're going to talk about, a lot of the resources to make this happen are going away. So we need to be really creative about this.
That. But before we do that, folks, if you're paying 30% of your income on housing, keep it.
Yeah.
Make sure that you give nobody any reason to make you have to leave that housing. So stay in that housing, stay secure, and stay safe. Coming back to you, I've been to a couple of the breakfasts, the Sabbath breakfasts, where we celebrate affordable housing and we, sit with people of faith. What have you seen since EBHO started to do the faith-based work also? What kinds of support have you seen from that community?
I think there's something innate in most faith traditions about recognizing the need as people of faith to respond to the needs of the people who are struggling the most. And I think in a lot of faith communities that shows up as we want to feed people who are hungry in our neighborhood, we want to provide immediate shelter. What's been really exciting about the relationship between the faith community and EBHO is as faith communities realize there are actually systemic solutions to this problem. They've begun to get engaged in creating affordable housing, in encouraging their governments to be their better selves and create more affordable housing in the community. And the faith community has also served to energize and inspire and encourage people who have been involved in this struggle for decades, and to let them know they're not alone, and to let them know that they are a part of something bigger than themselves. So I think it's been mutually beneficial to faith communities and those working for affordable housing.
You told me about a story very early in your life, an incident that happened which really sort of opened your eyes to the injustices that exist in the world. Would you like to share that with us?
Absolutely. I think that my journey around this work started. My father's from India, my mother's from Scotland. The first time I went back to India that I could remember, I was about 7 years old. We were visiting some family friends in Kolkata, and we came home one night, and the woman who lived there saw a homeless person sleeping in the doorstep. And she kicked the person out of the way and said some harsh words to him so that we could get into the house. And there was something that clicked in me, and I remember saying to my mother, why did she kick that man? Why would you bother somebody when all they were doing is sleeping? Why did he have to sleep in the doorway? Why didn't he have a home to go to? And this was happening about a week after I had been at Bible school and had been learning all of these songs about Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. And I think that was the moment that both I felt a call to ministry and a call to the work of justice. And so I think that's a large part of why I'm at EBHO today.
Thank you. Gloria, what was your first, the charge that runs through us that says, I'm going to do something, I'm going to change the world, I have a role to play in the social justice movement? How old were you, and when did that spark get lit in you?
Well, I was raised with a strong sense of social justice from my parents. I was raised in the Catholic tradition of social justice, and it's not my faith anymore, but I learned such wonderful things about just kind of the inherent responsibility to give back. And I grew up in a community that was marginalized because it was an African American community, and so people sort of ignored all the assets of that community because the people there were Black. And that always made me really angry and sad as well, because people were missing out on what I was experiencing. And Chandra, you shared this moment that crystallized things for you, and I think for me it actually came a little later. When I was in college, I was working as a camp counselor in some public housing developments in Boston. And I remember I was working with one of the little girls, and she threw a piece of trash on the ground. And I said, don't throw that on the ground, pick that up, this is your home. And she said, this is the projects, it doesn't matter. And I just thought, wow, what has she internalized about living here? And that's not okay, and we have to sort of explore what it means to be living in a place like this.
And I just want to point out that it's not just in India. that when somebody's sleeping in the streets or in front of somebody's house
right.
or blocking a store or something, that they're pushed aside
That's
or
right.
arrested. It happens right here in Berkeley on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to let the audience know that we just won our first victory for the Homeless Bill of Rights at the state of California, and it's AB 5. So please call your representatives and ask them to support AB 5's passage. I've been part of the community for a long time and have known of EBHO and have participated in many of your journeys. What really inspires me is how many different people are members of the organization. So can you speak to that a little bit, and how do people join and become part of the affordable housing movement?
Yeah.
Go
I'll
ahead.
just start really briefly by saying there's an old African proverb: if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think one of the things that's really exciting about EBHO is, as a member organization, it is made up of such a diverse array of people, because there's that recognition of any one of us by ourselves cannot achieve affordable housing for all people. Any individual architect, any nonprofit developer, any organization working for tenants' rights, any faith community.
What about individuals?
And none of us by ourselves could do that, but collectively we can make a huge impact. And you have a better sense of.
How do people call up EBHO and say, I want to be part of this?
You can do that.
So is it a membership organization?
We are, yes. So we're a membership organization, and all of the events that we're doing during the Affordable Housing Week that I mentioned are actually put on by our member organizations. And I brought our poster to show your folks about all the amazing things we have going on.
Just hold it up like that so they can zoom in.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Shonda mentioned, we have quite a wide range of organizations and individuals. The only criteria to becoming a member is that you care about people having an affordable, decent place to live, and then we want to welcome you. So you can call us, you can go to our website, ebho.org, come to any of these events and come meet us and see what we do, and just basically be enrolled in the work. And
these events are very inspiring, because you get to visit developments that are just breaking ground. You also get to actually visit with people who are living in many of the nonprofit housing developments in Alameda County. So I'm hoping that you folks are going to pick up the phone, call them, and join in this great effort. Let's shift a little bit and talk about Washington, D.C. and all the news that we're getting from there concerning all aspects of affordable housing is not good. So do you see a light at the end of a couple of years? Is this just a difficult time we're going through, or is this really a radical policy having affordable housing and more market rate housing? I'm just asking for your opinions on that.
Well, I think it's both of those things that you mentioned. Is it a time to see some hope, or is it a radical change? It's definitely both. I think what we're seeing now, unfortunately, is just the continuation of years, decades really, of disinvestment and the public sector pulling out of providing housing as a basic right. And as a basic good that people in the community are entitled to have. Sequestration is happening, so the federal agency that handles housing and homelessness, HUD, they're closing down some of their offices, and counties and cities are losing some of the funds that they have to work on these issues. Not to mention the fact that at the state level, we just lost about $1 billion a year for affordable housing through something called redevelopment. Huge blow for folks who work on issues of community development. I think that the bright side of all of this, if there is one, is that it's at times like these when people are really forced to be creative and completely rethink the way we work on these systems. So those of us who work for nonprofits or for local governments, we realize now we can't just rely on what we used to do. We have to think completely differently, and I think some interesting things will come out of that.
I do think that there's also a broader cultural issue, and I think that is, housing authorities are getting beaten up very, very badly, and I think that there's a huge amount of intentional efforts to blame poor people for being poor and to suggest that rich people are rich because of good, honest, hard work. And I think this is a place where I think that the role of the faith community is really important, because to step back and recognize the ways in which our society, which claims to be very horizontal, is actually very, very hierarchical, and that we do suggest that some people are more valuable than others, is very, very dangerous. It goes against pretty much every faith tradition. It goes against the tenets of what America says it's about. So I think we need to be having some of these broad conversations at the same time that we're engaging these really critical policy issues.
So can you talk a little bit more in terms of how you're partnering with nonprofit housing developers in terms of doing the organizing, the policy development, and of course, advocacy?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way EBHO does our work is through three main avenues: through education, through advocacy, and through coalition building. And I see all of that as really changing hearts and minds, because Shonda, you're absolutely right that it's a deeper cultural issue about who we blame, who we value. Well, we think that our own grandparents should have affordable housing, but those people shouldn't move into our backyards. And unfortunately, that's a very human reaction, to hold on to what you have and not let anyone else have it. And a lot of what we do is we go out to different cities and we speak to folks. We speak to people in the cities. We speak to the mayor's office, and we just speak to the residents who come out to community meetings and say, let us show you what it really means to have a full community where everybody has a decent home. It's really a really important thing that we do, and it's really difficult work that we do. But it takes all sorts of forms. It takes us, like I said, speaking out at community meetings. It takes us doing these events where people can actually see and tour the beautiful developments that have revitalized their neighborhoods. And sometimes it's really technical, boring policy stuff, which actually isn't boring, because it defines where you can build a homeless shelter, or where you can build an apartment building instead of another mini mansion that's going to be foreclosed and unsustainable later on. And one thing culturally I just wanted to add that I think has been a really interesting shift in the last couple of years is with the recession, as all of a sudden housing issues, in the Bay Area, everybody suffers from high housing costs, but in the last few years that's been even more pronounced. And once foreclosures got really out of control, in America we have a deep cultural attachment to the idea of home ownership as the American dream. Once that started getting seriously threatened, all of a sudden housing got a lot of attention, and politically and in the media, which is a mixed bag, but mostly a good thing. So the challenge is, how do we take that attention and broaden it out to not just sort of this American dream of homeownership? Important, but not really the only piece of the puzzle.
What has always really upset me is that we talk about, this is subsidies to the poor, and it's homeowners saying this while they're the ones who are taking the biggest subsidy on their taxes as their home loans being exempt. So there's much to be done and many deeper conversations to be had. Do you, in the work that you're doing, do you have anything else coming up after Housing Sabbath the week?
Yes, so we do have Housing Sabbath, which is when communities of faith kind of open their doors to have these conversations about why affordable housing matters to people who are seeking or recognize the need for affordable housing, and why it should matter to faith communities. We've got some really exciting ideas for the next phase of helping faith communities get engaged in this issue. Like I said, a lot of churches and synagogues and mosques, their direct experience of this issue is finding people sleeping on their property and saying, this is sad, we need to do something about this isn't right. We're beginning to develop an affordable housing 101 training for houses of worship so that they can learn about the broader ways of addressing this problem, and so that they can be equipped, they can be community planners, they can be organizers, they can recognize the importance of their voice as people of faith when their cities are discussing whether affordable housing should be a priority or not. And I think we're going to have a really mobilized, powerful community as a result of that.
I just want to share with you that I had a guest from the Western Region Advocacy Project, Paul Bowden, on the show, and they have created a toolkit that we're now using in the community. So I think if we took that one and then looked at the one that EBHO is doing, there might be more brilliance in
Absolutely.
it. And I'll make sure that that gets
that's
to
a
you.
great
that
idea.
kit gets to you. It's being updated right now.
And I should mention that one of the really exceptional things going on at EBHO that is very much like some of the work that BOSS and that RAP do that is very, very powerful is the resident organizing work, where residents within affordable housing are becoming the experts and the leaders and the strongest voices in advocating for affordable housing.
That is critical, because when we show up speaking to power, they sort of look at us like, oh, you're back here again. We've heard you. But when the folks who are actually living the experience shows up, that's when they, stop reading the comic books or whatever they do when they're looking down. I just had to say that.
And all of us together are a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It takes all of them.
Gloria, we were talking a little bit earlier about organizing, and community organizing is, a personal passion of mine. I think it's one of the most critical things we do in the world is when we get out and organize our communities to make change. So share with us how EBHO does that and how people can become involved. And then you were also mentioning a state bill.
Yes. Yeah,
so let's get into that a little bit.
That'll all go together. So Shonda talked a little bit about the resident organizing that we do, and I'm in fact wearing my EBHO sticker because I just before this came from a rally at Oakland City Hall, where we brought together both professionals in the affordable housing field, but also folks who live in homes developed by public housing authorities, by nonprofits. We brought them all together to a rally at City Hall to say, hey, you can't cut all the money in the city budget for housing. The city was considering just totally wiping out their housing staff. And we're like, that's not okay. So over the work that we've done over the last couple of years, we have developed this amazing group of residents, youths, seniors, people from all different cultures, different languages who live in buildings across Oakland and beyond. And we bring them together, and we also empower them by giving them leadership training to come and speak out to the elected officials and say to these folks, you know about these issues best. You are already leaders in your community, but you may not have known how you can get access to these people in power. So we can sort of help you have the tools to do that. And then they go and they speak out and do it great themselves.
Do you also train them to speak with banks and other lenders and speak to bank practices around lending, all of that? Because it takes a partnership to build a building.
It does.
And it usually includes banks, and it includes the state, and it includes local governments. So I was wondering if that's also part of the training. And
we're getting more into that, actually, that whole area of holding banks accountable, and it's something a couple of us on staff are very involved in that. We haven't made that as huge a focus of our resident organizing yet, but we have also done some training specifically on things like very complicated financial transactions that cities like Oakland engaged in that now have contributed to them being in a lot of debt. And so we've trained our residents to say, you can talk about these complicated financial issues. Anybody can talk about these things. You are all experts on your community. So yeah, that is one of the things that we're addressing for sure. So we do a lot of that work on the local level in Oakland, in Berkeley, in Concord, Walnut Creek, Pleasanton. So both places where these issues are talked about a lot, and places where people are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk about those people. Those are the places we need to be the most. But really, and you talked about DC and how this all trickles down from above, which is totally true. So we need to go beyond the local level, and we're doing a lot of state advocacy work and involving those residents that we train and speaking to their state representatives. So something we've been working on is called Senate Bill 391. So it's 391, which is the Homes and Jobs Act. And basically what that would do is create a revenue source that would be there every year and couldn't just go up and down with the budget to allow more affordable homes to be built.
And does this go on the ballot?
No, this
No.
is this
Okay.
is going through. It's going through the legislature right now, actually.
great.
So there's still an opportunity to call, call your state senator, call your state assembly person, and call the governor especially, and say we want SB 391. The governor has said that his priorities for the state are, education. And jobs, and absolutely, who doesn't agree with that? But when he says, I don't care about housing because I care about education, kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So tell him he should be signing this bill.
So people are supposed to get educated and have jobs, but no place to live.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Makes no sense. Yeah.
Sometimes governors don't make sense.
It's true.
Let's close out this show with any last words that you have to say to the folks who are watching, and then if you would take a turn doing the same thing. And speak to the camera this time.
Absolutely. So there's a phrase, Ubuntu. It comes from the Southern African countries, and it basically means I am because we are. And I think that at the center of this movement to build affordable housing for all people is that principle of Ubuntu. It is that understanding that even if I live in a mansion in the top of the Oakland Hills or in a very wealthy community, my fullness of being isn't true, isn't real until the homeless person living in a completely separate community is equally well housed and well cared for. I think at the center of this movement is that principle of Ubuntu.
Gloria?
I think that was really beautifully said. I don't have much to add except that we are a nation and a region of abundance and amazing, brilliant, beautiful people, organizations, institutions, places, and so that makes it all the more tragic that we still have people who don't have a safe and decent place to lay their heads at night. And we can do better, and we have done better. And I think bringing that spirit can really help us to achieve that. So I really hope that folks will get involved. Please do check out EBHO's website and just speak out in your communities and say that everybody should have a safe place to live.
Thank you so very much. For those of you watching this show on Berkeley Community Media, please send in your comments. Let us know what you would like to hear about. If you're watching this on YouTube, please send the link to every friend that you have. Thank you so much, and we will see you.